Hey everybody, welcome to the real United States, and welcome once again to Lorton, Virginia. Now here today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of a dark period in our past in America. We are at the site of the Lorton Reformatory. Now this is a prison that was built in 1910, and it stayed in operation until 2001. It's part of the District of Columbia prison system, judicial system. It was built here about 20 miles or so south of the DC because it had this huge 1,155 acre tract of land to build this facility on. So that's 5 square kilometers, or just slightly less than 2 square miles. And it actually has little clusters of buildings still standing on it around that are spread over that couple of miles. But this is the main part of the facility. Now, since 2001, the facility is closed, and through a lot of negotiations that are immaterial to this video, the property has been started to be used for other commercial and public good. Now, part of it is this part that we're near here is actually being turned into the Cultural Arts Center. So a lot of places that do crafts and artistic sorts of things, sculpting, pottery, painting, whatever, is done here at what is now the Cultural Arts Center. Now in another set of facilities a couple of miles away, they're actually converting the old dormitories into apartments and homes and lofts that'll be available for rent for housing. So they're repurposing the existing buildings to the extent possible. There is, of course, also some new construction. And I'd like to talk a little bit now about the construction. What you see behind me here is, instead of a cell block structure, it was decided when the prison was being built in 1910 to use a dormitory style. This was a medium security facility for the most part. Parts of it were fenced or a little heavier security, but it was a medium security facility. Well, the dormitories, as it turns out, were actually largely built by the inmates. And they were built from brick that was manufactured in kilns here on the property. So the whole thing, literally from the earth up, was dug up and made and built right here by the inmates. Now, these buildings are in pretty good shape. Again, they've been refurbished somewhat already. They're leaving a lot of the markings to the extent possible. Again, they're trying to preserve the history. The history's a little dark, folks. This prison is most well known for the fact that in the early part of the 20th century, from 1910 through 1917 or so, that this was, in fact, the holding facility for 168 women who were suffragettes. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, the women's suffrage movement was the woman's right to vote movement. And 168 of these women from Washington, D.C. were arrested, detained, and some of them for longer periods of time. The treatment here was very bad. And in fact, the night of November 14th, 1917 is called the Night of Terror, when a lot of the detainees were tortured, beaten, and abused. They had started a hunger strike. You know, they were pushing back against authorities, and authorities didn't like that, so they pushed back worse, and it just erupted into a very bad situation, which eventually was investigated and corrected. But again, it's a very dark part of our history here in the United States that, I don't know, I think a lot of people maybe are not aware of. You know, I think most people here in the United States are aware of the women's suffrage movement that happened in the early part of the 20th century, but perhaps not the details of what some women went through to fight for the right to vote, to fight for equal rights. So I thought it was important to bring you here. We just had International Women's Day here a few days ago. I'm sorry we didn't get to this so we could show it at that time. It would have been appropriate, but it's not really material. Anyway, the facility now, I say, is being preserved, and the building's repurposed. So, you know, even though there is some darkness in the past, it's at least we're not wasting the property and the buildings. We're putting them to good purpose. They're going to maintain, to the extent possible, also the guard towers. And actually, let's go this way, and we'll swing around, and I will show you that, in fact, now the guard towers were built at different points during the history of the facility. These look to be slightly more modern. Not from the 1910 era, perhaps later into the 30s, 40s, 50s perhaps. Again, this was open until 2001, but they're going to leave all of these standing. Now, some of the ones at the other part of the facility are a little more classic, what you might think of as being turn of the 20th century kind of guard towers. You know, they have brick bases that come up in a pyramid style, and a lot of them, they're fancier architecture. Those are also being left. Only one of them, and I don't know which one at this point, I think it's probably the large octagon one over at the other part of this facility. Only one of them is going to remain open to the public, however. At least that is the current plan as I understand it. So anyway, this is a really big tract of land. A lot of it is actually still vacant. So I'm sure that over the course of years and perhaps decades that you will see a development here of more shops, more housing, more arts, hopefully. Those of us who are creators, of course, love the arts. But only time will tell. But at least we are repurposing this facility with a dark history. We're repurposing it with some good intentions and some good use. So anyway, that is the Lorton Reformatory here in North Central Virginia. I hope you've enjoyed your visit here. If you got questions or comments, I'll do what I can to answer them. Please leave them in the comments section below. I love hearing from you. I try to get back to everybody I can. If you're new here, hey, pick subscribe, come along for the adventure. We love having everybody with us. And as always, thank you for watching.